Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys checking the video out and making some time to watch it. And guys, today we're going to be talking about what a cold front does to bass in the month of October and November. Really, it's just sort of like that mid to late fall period. There's lots of things that go on during, or actually before, during, and after a cold front. So we're going to cover that in today's video, and maybe it'll help you guys catch some fish when those inevitable cold fronts roll through. Before we get started, guys, I just want to invite everybody out there, anyone interested in booking an on-the-water jerkbait lesson with me, starting to get that going right now. All you have to do is go to my Facebook page, Randy Block at Professional Angler, shoot me a private message for information, and we'll get you set up and get your jerkbait skills honed up a little bit on that. So much appreciated. Okay, guys, cold fronts, they're inevitable. If you guys are going to fish very much, you're going to constantly deal with changing weather conditions. And there's no greater change as far as in how bass mood, personality, their aggressiveness or their lack of aggressiveness is affected other than a cold front. A cold front is the major factor with that to a large degree. Now, there can be some things like, rising water levels that play a role, but that's a different category completely. But what I want to focus on in today's video is specifically how cold fronts affect bass during the month of October and November. That's completely different than any other time of the year. So we're going to get into that a little bit. Now, in my opinion, there are two times of the year where cold fronts really, really severely impact how bass move and how they bite. And that is during the pre-spawn, when the water temperatures are sort of in the 50s. And again, it's in the fall time of the year when the water temperature is in the 50s and the 60s, like we are now, primarily October and November. Cold fronts don't really have that big of an impact on fish during the summertime or, really from like May to September. When you have warmer waters, like when your water temperatures are starting to get maxed out, you don't, for whatever reason, the fronts are a little bit different. They don't quite have the impact as they do different times of the year. But I'm going to guess that out of pre-spawn or the fall, I think the fall cold fronts have the biggest impact on what fish do with that. So here's the situation with that a little bit. One of the things that's going to behoove you as an angler is to sort of become an amateur meteorologist. Weather and studying weather patterns in correlation with how fish react and bite it's an art form in itself. It's a science. We've gotten away from that a little bit. I know back when I started fishing and during, when I was, at the top of my game fishing in the 90s and early 2000s, all of the great fishermen out there were also great at predicting the weather and talking about the weather. You don't see that much anymore, but it used to be a big deal, and for good reason there. Now, when you're talking about cold fronts in particular, this is what happens. There's a couple different phases to this on how bass react to it. You got the prefrontal conditions when the front is on the way. You got the actual period of when the front is passing through, which is just a small, blip in time. And then you have the post-front period. Both of these periods, there's probably 2 days prior to a front comes in, you got a prefrontal situation, and then you got a post-frontal situation that lasts a couple days afterwards. Now, all fronts are not created equal, as far as what they do and what they bring to a weather pattern for the lake. I mean, some fronts have a lot of wind with them. Some fronts have different levels of precipitation. Some levels have bigger temperature drops. Some fronts have clouds hang around after the front passes. Some fronts have, clear skies after the front passes. Not all fronts are equal, so that has some impact to play as well. So here's some sort of a general foundation I want to start you guys out to sort of give you, an idea of what you need to be doing before and after these fronts come in. Now, I think everybody knows that test fish is very long. It's like as a front is approaching, the fish become a little bit more aggressive. And what happens with that is you've got some changes in different situations. You usually have a steady or falling barometric pressure. You usually have some type of a increasing southerly airflow, southerly, westerly, southwesterly airflow. You've got a little bit increasing humidity levels a little bit, and you've got varying degrees of cloud cover that move in with that approaching front. As far as, the light intensity with that. And given these factors, since you've got normally a little bit lower light level, you've got higher humidities, you've got a stronger, warmer southerly airflow with moisture to it, and a steady or falling barometric pressure, these are the elements that make fish more aggressive. They make them bite better, and fishing is always better before a front with that. Now, one of the ways that you can take advantage of this is one of my favorite ways to approach a prefrontal condition is to fish moving power baits. This is the time that you really want to upgrade your size of bait and upgrade your speed of retrieve. So this is when you want to pull out the power baits, pull out your spinner baits, pull out your chatter baits, pull out the larger swim baits, crank baits, that type of stuff. Anything that's going to draw not only a reaction strike from the fish, but also, that they want to eat, because fish tend to feed up prior to a front. A lot of it has to do with the entire food chain's a little bit more active. The wind has the plankton and algae moving. Bait fish are a little more active. Predator fish are a little bit more active. Fish are just simply more aggressive. Their mood and their personality tends to be more aggressive in these situations. So this is when I like to move and fish shallower water with those moving baits, especially if you have higher winds associated with that prefrontal condition. If you get a front where you've got those airflows are over 15 miles an hour, sort of that 15, 20, 25 mile an hour wind zone, it can be some of the best fishing you're going to have in the fall time of the year, right before those fronts roll in with power fishing. Now, the actual time frame as the front is passing through, this usually is a real short window. It's usually just 2, 3, maybe 4 hours that this takes place. This even is a greater level of aggressiveness. If you can get out there right at the time this is taking place, 2, 3, 4 hours either side of that window, this is when you're going to notice the heightened level of activity on a body of water. And obviously, and why we're not going to spend a lot of time on this is the odds of you being on the lake right when a front comes through, it's pretty small. Usually you can get out for a day or two before the front comes out, take advantage of what I'm talking about, but actually being there when the front rolls through, a lot of guys don't get to experience that. But if you happen to be there in that situation and it starts raining or something during that situation, guys, that's when you're going to experience probably the best fall fishing you're going to have. If there's anything that's going to light up the bite, and if you get into an area that's got some fish in it, and you're there when that front passes through, and you've got some wind and you got some rain with that front, especially if that rain is a light to moderate rain. You don't want a heavy rain, but some type of a light to moderate rain. That's some of the best fall fishing days I've had have been with that situation, specifically with the spinnerbait. Man, if you get a fall day and the water temperature's in the 50s or 60s, and you got a 15 mile an hour south wind that's fixing to change to the north as this front rolls through, and it's raining, if you pick up a spinnerbait and cover water, you're going to catch some fish on almost any lake that you go to. Now, after the front comes through, you've got a 1 or 2 day period before things start to stabilize again. And a lot of people have this it's a misconception that when a front rolls through, the fish quit biting. Now, there is an element of truth to this, and there's an element of untruth to that, because a lot of it has to do with the light levels after that front rolls through. Some fronts that roll through, some of the big severe fronts that roll through, as soon as that front rolls through, it's bluebird. It's like the wind switches hard straight out of the north, bluebird condition, low humidity levels, and it can get tough, especially if you lose that wind. If you are involved in a frontal system where that front has kept the wind up a little bit, even if it's out of the north, those fish are going to still be biting. The thing that really gets it tough is if you lose your wind and you lose your cloud cover after that front comes through. That's the thing that makes it really tough, and that's usually something that happens on the second or third day after a front. A lot of times, the day after a front or right after that front passes through, you still have a significant amount of wind. The fish still haven't been impacted severely by that, and the fishing can actually be pretty good like the day after a front rolls through, if you still have that wind over 10 or 15 miles an hour. And this is again when I stay with the moving baits. I don't get away from the moving baits all the way. I may downsize. You know, say for example, if I was fishing a half ounce lipless crankbait, I might downsize to a 1/4 ounce, or if I'm fishing, you know, like a Mega Bass 2.0 square bill, I might go to the 1.2, the smaller size. If I'm fishing a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait with a big number 6 willow leaf prior to the front, I might downsize to a 3/8 ounce, something smaller with some smaller blades on it, right after that front goes through. But on the second day after the front, once you start losing your wind, that's when you need to put down those power baits, and you need to start going with the slower presentations and a more finesse presentation. That's why after a front goes through, 2 or 3 days after that, it's a really good time to fish a jig. A jig, whether it be a full-size jig or a finesse jig or a football head jig, is one of the top post-frontal lures that you can throw. Same with the shaky head, same with the Ned rig, drop shot, you know, Texas rig creature bait, something that you can fish on the bottom, because once you lose your wind and you lose your low light levels, those fish are not going to want to chase. They're not going to be near as aggressive. They're going to be tucked down on the bottom. They're going to be tucked down closer to cover. And that's why you got to really slow down and fish those more slower finessey baits. But anyway, guys, that's just sort of an overview of how the bass react during the fall time of the year. Obviously, there's always some minor difference here and there, but that'll give you sort of a foundation to begin with on that. So give it a try. I hope it helps out. We'll see you guys.